Ooh, are we live? Ooh, we are live. All right. What is up? Back again after yesterday. Ooh, man, so much to get into here. Don't even really know where to start. But yeah, so anyway, gonna review we're gonna start with the first episode of season 6 of Better Call Saul entitled Wine and Roses. I mean, damn, there's just with two episodes back to back here, it's so much to unpack. And it's crazy too, because the episodes didn't even really I didn't even realize that almost the first episode ended and the second one began. They just kind of bled one into another. Even after the cold opening scene of the second episode, we didn't get a formal, intro. There wasn't the title back music after the cold opening scene. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to get into here. So, I'm just going to unpack it right here. So, yeah, all right. So, just getting right into it, man. There's a lot to tackle. So, the cold opening scene of the first episode, again, it was kind of revealed prior to this, but it wasn't going to be a Gene Takovic scene for the first time in the history of the series. And definitely, if you didn't realize the surprise beforehand, they definitely made it look like it was going to be a Gene Takovic scene, because it initially started in black and white, but then slowly we realize a bunch of ties are being dumped into a big box and all the color starts to emerge. So yeah, really cool opening scene here. Again, it wasn't completely revealed to us. So without breaking down every single little detail in this scene, that's true. I guess it was technically the Gene timeline. I suppose it was. That is a good call. It wasn't in black and white though, for sure. That's a good call right there. But again, so I believe, again, this is not officially confirmed, but I'm pretty sure it was heavily implied that this is Saul Goodman's house. And that was a pretty badass house, in my opinion. I definitely wasn't expecting that. Did not expect Saul Goodman to live in such an amazing Venetian-style home right there. Unbelievably opulent. I guess crime does pay, as Skylar said to Walter White when she visited his condo. Unbelievably opulent. I think this is excuse me, I'm just pretty sure this is supposed to be Saul Goodman's house, without a doubt. I mean, so I guess following, Saul fleeing, maybe this is sort of the feds RICOing all of his possessions. I think this is what the scene was here. I'm pretty sure that this is a scene of the feds RICOing all of his possessions here. Again, not what I expected at all for Saul Goodman's house to be. I don't know if anyone expected Saul Goodman to live in a house like that every time after working with Walter White, he was going home to that amazing house. And again, I'm pretty sure while it was just implied and wasn't outwardly displayed concretely, I'm pretty sure the final ace kicker here is when they're loading the dresser onto the U-Haul truck, when we see the Zafiro Añejo top fall out of the dresser and just sort of fall into the street, just some sort of tchotchke to these people. It has no monetary value, but the sentimental value of this top that Saul held on to this entire time, back from when he and Giselle scams Ken in season 2 of Breaking Bad. I believe it's the Severo Añejo top right there. So just an unbelievable scene there. Yeah, I definitely agree. Saul living like Scarface, definitely. He had a house like Scarface, absolutely. Wasn't expecting that at all. But in hindsight, really well done by the creators. I really love that opening scene. Again, kind of a change of pace from the Gene Takovic black and white scenes that we're used to, for sure. I didn't know how I felt about that initially when I saw that. But, this scene, unbelievable. Blew my expectations away, and Saul Goodman didn't even appear. I mean, it was just the feds RICOing his possessions. So, unbelievable scene here. Definitely can't do it justice by describing it. You got to go back and watch it for sure. So, yeah, that's the cold opening scene there. Then, again, I got the episode right here. Got to look at my notes here. So, there's going to be a little bit of stumbling maybe going in between from scene to scene. But yeah, so then following this, I definitely lost track here of like the acts in this episode. Everything kind of just flowed together. But anyway, the first scene of Act 1 then picks up with the story of Nacho Vargas. They said would be heavily emphasized in the first episode of this series. Again, without going too much into detail here, we see Nacho completely book it after the mercenaries go in to Lalo's estate. We hear, as Nacho's running away, we see Nacho listen to the gunshots and just flee into the wilderness. And what I definitely noticed in this episode was the pacing truly was really rapid compared to, the first 5 seasons of Better Call Saul. I really noticed that for sure. You definitely thought, maybe Nacho would be wandering in the wilderness for a little bit longer, but before we know it, after running into the morning from 3 o'clock in the morning, likely into, dawn, or is that what it's called? Well, yeah, dawn. Yeah, running into dawn when the sun is finally starting to come up. He's after this. He then gets a phone call from Tyrus where it's understood that he has to stay out of sight. This is Salamanca country. Everyone's going to be looking for you. He has to stay out of sight here for sure. Then again, that pretty much ends that scene here. Then following this, we then see the scene that was teased prior to the release of this season. Again, definitely didn't see this coming as well. I thought this was the place that Mike had his R&R in Mexico, but I was completely wrong. Again, this scene here definitely setting up what is to come with this body double that has been teased over the course of the lead up to season 6 of Better Call Saul. Again, we see Lalo conversing with these people. He definitely knows them quite well, but of course, we don't know as the audience who these characters are yet. Sort of making small talk, definitely making it clear that he knows them. Then the character who almost certainly, well, it was revealed to us, the character who had been teased in the trailer for season 6 of Better Call Saul then comes in with a very full beard, as Lalo described as ZZ Top beard. It's then revealed that he goes into the bathroom to shave. Lalo, of course, tells him to keep the mustache and soul patch because it looks good. Again, myself here with Lalo faking his own death, kind of just did. But anyway, that pretty much ends the scene here where we see this currently unknown individual, the sort of person who is a dead ringer for Lalo Salamanca, go in and shave his beard. Again, looking at my notes here, so if I'm the brief interruption will be just note taking here or looking over the notes. All right, then following this scene, we then pick up back at Kim's apartment, or excuse me, we then pick up back at the hotel following them waking up that night after their plan to, agreeing to go after Howard Hamlin personally. Again, this scene basically is a continuation to, the next morning where they eventually end up back at their apartment getting ready for their respective days. And now we get into the scene that was teased prior to the premiere of this episode, where we see Kim take out that thermos with the bullet hole in it. Of course, we know that Saul already disclosed the entire story to her, and in the final episode of season 5 of Better Call Saul, I definitely wondered if there was going to be some sort of long conversation that ensued here between Kim and Jimmy after seeing this thermos. But of course, to my surprise, and again, to just sort of emphasize the pacing of the show, there was no conversation. They just moved on completely. They didn't even further discuss what happened at the end of season 5 of Better Call Saul. Kim very unceremoniously throws the thermos away, sort of already, hearing the story. They didn't have to converse about it anymore. They're kind of just moving on. And again, it definitely foreshadows, in my opinion, just the drastic, almost exterior personality change of Kim Wexler, in my opinion, for sure. I mean, just unbelievable here with the pacing of this show. So yeah, following this, we then see, again, it's a long intro here. Again, looking over the notes here, so I apologize. I mean, the episode just came out. So yeah, that basically ends the first act when Kim throws away the thermos into the trash can, and they drive away to go about their respective days. Then following this, the next act of this episode then picks up again at Lalo's hacienda. We see the Sicario, as Gus Fring called him in the preview scene, look over. We can see that he's dead on the ground. We knowing that Lalo killed him after he told him what to say, after he incapacitated him. This scene, again, I don't want to get bogged down in too much detail here. We all just watched it, but the point of this scene here is it is abundantly clear that Lalo faked his own death, and even the cousins at this point realize that their cousin Lalo was dead. Again, I'm not really sure the physics behind this of Lalo being able to find this corpse being all charred, and how he was able to get his dental records to match. Again, I mean, is it this person who, I mean, I don't even know. I don't even want to speculate here. I don't know how he was able to do this, how he was able to find this corpse all charred and have the dental records match where, the federales and everyone thinks that Lalo was dead. And even upon the cousins stumbling upon his body, they immediately realize, at least they think, that this is their flesh and blood. This is Lalo here, thinking that he's dead for sure. And then, hell-bent on revenge after seeing this. So that's definitely the premise here of the first scene in Act 2. Excuse me. Okay, moving on. Again, I apologize for the delays in between. I have to get to the various different scenes here. So then, following this, following the cousins realizing that or believing that their Lalo is dead. The episode then picks up with Gus Fring receiving a call from Juan Bolsa to confirm this information as well, believing that Lalo is dead. Even saying so much that he's dead, and of course everything that I just discussed about the the cousins being hell bent on revenge, being the priority after you know Lalo being dead. Again, a lot of detail here. It's hard to get bogged down in every little thing. But then following this again, we see another scene that's been teased here prior to the release of season 6 of Better Call Saul with Mike and Gus conversing again. I talked about the scene more depth in a previous video in full about this scene specifically. Again, Gus at this point in time almost doesn't believe that this could be the case where Lalo could be dead, yet all of the mercenaries are dead to a man. Mike saying it's been known to happen, sort of, giving Gus his vote of confidence despite his, reservations about this story. Of course, then following this, Mike, of course, advocates for picking up Nacho Varga down at the border, clearly with the emotional empathy for him. But of course, Gus doesn't feel the same way for sure. Again, I talked about this scene more in depth in a previous video, so I feel like I'm just kind of repeating myself here. But basically, in this scene, it's again the back and forth between Gus saying that yes, Nacho Varga has his respect, yet he still worked against his own interests when trying to kill Hector Salamanca. So there's definitely not this emotional empathy that Gus has for Nacho like Mike clearly does. So again, and it's definitely pretty interesting here. It was more focused on in the second scene, the second episode, excuse me, of Better Call Saul that was displayed tonight. But again, it's very interesting to see the disagreements that Mike and Gus have. I feel like we really didn't see that as much in Breaking Bad for sure, where we didn't see this sort of, only character who I think Gus respects enough to have these sort of disagreements with, and almost, has the sort of, I don't even know, gravitas maybe to be able to, contend with Gus Fring and just kind of not agree with every order he's giving. So, pretty interesting scene here for sure that sets up the sort of storyline between these two characters that will ensue in this episode and the next. So then following this, the final scene in this act, a pretty amazing scene here for sure, in my opinion. It picks up at the Bernalillo County Courthouse where we see, Kim going about her respective day with her PD work, and we see Saul about to meet with the district attorney as well as the detective Tim Roberts to discuss the Lalo Salamanca case. Of course, here it's then revealed to us that all of the ruses that Saul undertook. Sorry, I'm kind of checking out the chat here. Sorry, got distracted there. But anyway, all of the ruses that Saul undertook to get Lalo Salamanca bail, they want to revoke for being total lies. The address he gave was a Dairy Queen. His name isn't Jorge de Guzman. Everything here is a fabrication. They want to deny the bail. Of course, Gus saying that, I read a comment here. Of course, Saul saying that he's unobligated to, meet until their first preliminary hearing. And he, of course, accidentally mentions his client as Lalo Salamanca instead of Jorge de Guzman. Again, this is basically the premise of this scene here. And while the payoff, there was no real payoff here in respect to, this sort of aha moment for the DA and for the detectives, will be definitely interesting to see if this sort of slip of the tongue here definitely comes back to bite Saul, at the end of the second act of the first episode here. So let's see, just going to check out the chat for a second. So yeah, him being the brains of the whole thing for sure. Yeah, unbelievably true. Definitely kind of Saul kind of taking a back seat here. It's pretty amazing to see for sure. Again, why did Gus set up Nacho? I'm confused. Yeah, again, there's a lot of mysteries here. There's a lot of mysteries here for sure that, I'll definitely hopefully have more time to reflect on as I rewatch these episodes and as I, am able to make more in-depth videos about the first couple episodes. So again, I apologize for the occasional interruptions as I'm looking over my notes here. All right, so following this, then we're already in Act 3. So in the first scene of Act 3, the episode then picks up with Saul Goodman driving his brown Ford Taurus. Again, another scene, it's amazing. Come to think about it, before I get into the Act 3 here, it's just unbelievable to think about how so many of these scenes were teased beforehand. And I really feel like after watching all of at least the trailer and a lot of the teasers for season 6 of Better Call Saul, I definitely noticed the a lot of the scenes that were teased came from those. A lot of the scenes from there were from the first couple episodes, so definitely not giving away too much. I feel for the final 11 episodes of the series. It's kind of crazy to even say that. But so anyway, yeah, getting into it, the third act here again picks up with a scene at the restaurant here. Again, without getting bogged in too much detail here, the premise of this scene, again, I discussed this one in a previous video as well, but after some just formal cordialities, again, they discussed the office and the sort of the car. I discussed that in more in depth in a previous video, so definitely check that out here. But again, the main payoff of this scene is that following these sort of cordialities, Kim then wants to talk about the undermining of Howard Hamlin. And we even see Saul ask him, like, we're actually doing this, we're really doing this, that we talked about a couple days ago. Of course, there's this sort of, reservation on Saul's part for sure. And then following him saying that, I really feel like his sort of, perception of how Kim took his reservation kind of caused him to maybe change his mind here. It's a pretty interesting dynamic here. I definitely think that Saul really sort of believes the thing he said about, am I bad for you? I think he definitely feels sort of, I think there's some emotional sort of dissonance here, if that's the right way to put it, about, the way he feels about, corrupting Kim Wexler for sure. So definitely sort of, uh, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here, but yeah, definitely the sort of premise of this scene here, where they eventually, following the, initial reservation by Saul, eventually he agrees to undertake the plan to undermine Howard Hamlin that ensues over the course of this episode. All right. Whoa. All right. So yeah. So again, I apologize for the delays. Probably should have more of a split screen here or something like that. But now working off the most high tech setup here. But anyway, so following the second scene in Act 2 then picks up with Nacho Varga going to this hotel. And again, I did talk about this actually. And again, it definitely shows the sort of pacing of this show, where following Tyrus saying, take the battery out of your phone for an hour, then go north and then put it back in and I'll tell you what to do. That conversation didn't ensue on screen, but then it's finally revealed to us that after Nacho gets to this motel, it's then clearly revealed to us that this was all part of the plan that Tyrus told him to do, because when the receptionist saw Nacho, she immediately gave him the keys, knowing what she had to do. He goes to the hotel room following this. Then basically following this, I believe he talks again. Yes, he talks with Tyrus again here, basically saying, Tyrus tells him to lay low, everyone's after you. I believe he said that Eladio put a bounty on your head. You have to stay out of sight here. Everyone in the cartel wants you dead. They think you're a traitor. And then following this scene, it then cuts to Mike Ehrmantraut out playing with his daughter Kaylee. Again, a little bit too old, but that's neither here nor there. What are you going to do? But anyway, we see Nacho call Mike for some reassurance, I suppose. And of course, Mike does not take his phone call here, likely on the orders of Gus Fring, I would imagine, because we definitely know that Mike wants to help Nacho and he wants him to get out. And definitely the second episode really reveals this payoff, where the scene involving Nacho Varga's father. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. But yeah, so that ends Act 3 in this episode. We see Nacho at this hotel where he waits it out. So yeah, again, the pace, as I'm sort of scrolling through my notes here, the pace of the first couple episodes, unbelievably quick. Again, I'm jumping ahead of myself here, but to already have this sort of confrontation with the cousins that happened in the second episode, getting ahead of myself here, of course, you would think that payoff would happen way down the line. But again, the pacing is just unbelievably quick, in my opinion. And honestly, I'm not too upset with it. I definitely respected, and there was a lot of things to enjoy about that sort of slow burn that the first 5 seasons were. But man, we are balls to the wall right now, to excuse the expression. So anyway, following this, the fourth act of this episode then picks up with Jimmy and Kim. Again, we then see the sort of plan to undermine Howard Hamlin finally take form on screen, where we finally discover what they're trying to do here. Again, this absolutely was one of my favorite scenes of this episode. Very underrated scene here. Again, I don't want to get bogged down in describing every little detail that happens in the scene. Again, it would take forever. We all just watched it. But basically, the payoff here is that following Saul, with under the guise of, wanting to take a tour of the country club, a big scene ensues where he even feigns anti-Semitism for not being able to be a club member when Kevin Wachtel clearly talks to the director of member relations or something to that effect, saying he doesn't want Saul to be a member. Again, it's likely that based on everything that happens here, I really feel like all of these sort of happenstance events were definitely planned by Jimmy and Kim. It's almost as if they knew Kevin would be there and they knew Kevin would be absolutely unbelievably upset to see, Saul Goodman after what he went through with him in season 5 of Better Call Saul. So all of this definitely sort of seemed concocted. But anyway, without getting into every single specific detail of this plan, the premise here is clearly to sort of paint Howard Hamlin as this sort of cocaine user. I guess that's the sort of payoff here, where the plan is to sort of get Clifford Maine to sort of be weary of his business partnership with Howard Hamlin because he's a cocaine user. That appears to be the setup here, with the planting the cocaine in his locker and having it fall out once he and Cliff come back from the round of golf. Again, a pretty funny scene here with Saul, unbelievably, I guess, in the moment, ingenuity acting here when he gets completely naked and covers his face and act like he's just a member drying off, in the locker room. Really funny scene for sure. Definitely not the nudity I was expecting when they gave that nudity warning prior to the first episode. But yeah, so that's pretty much the payoff here. That's the plan. That's without getting into every single little detail here. Again, this was, I think, one of the most, I wouldn't say underrated because it just came out, but definitely one of the most low-key, like, great scenes of the entire episode. The scene at the country club, really well done, really funny, and we finally got to see what the plan against Howard Hamlin is that Kim and Jimmy have enacted. I believe that is the end of Act 4, if I'm not mistaken. I think that might have been one long scene here. Again, another thing too is I remember following the ends of the seasons. Definitely, I think how it's presented on television is maybe not how it's drawn up in the writer's room in respect to what an act is and what a scene is. But definitely be interesting to see in the post following this once all the information comes out. So I believe that was the end of Act 4 here, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it wasn't. It definitely cuts a commercial for sure, but I'm not sure if that was the end of the act. But then following this, the 5th and final act in this episode. Again, before I get into that, I guess I'll just take a look at the chat here. Lalo stayed in Mexico. He is still in Mexico for sure. Anyway, getting into it. The final act of this episode then picks up back with Jimmy and Kim spying on Cliff and Howard, following them leaving the locker room, then trying to, basically the premise here is trying to figure out if Cliff sort of fell for the ruse here, if Cliff was really taken aback by the cocaine in the locker room. Did he truly have reservations about it? Or did he just think nothing of it? Did he think, oh, there's no way that Howard Hamlin would be a cocaine user? And again, it's definitely iffy here. And it's definitely over the course of these 2 episodes, we don't really know where Clifford Maine's head's at. But clearly it appears that the point of this plan is that, Cliff wants to settle this Sandpiper, settlement right away because he doesn't want any issues to ensue in respect to, Howard Hamlin's legal acumen. If information comes out that the law firm, that the head lawyer of the head partner of the lawyer of the law office they're partnering with on this case is a cocaine user. So I believe that is the sort of premise here of this plan to undermine Howard Hamlin in order to speed up the settlements of the Sandpiper Crossing settlement in order to get their share of the common fund and have their $1 million. So let's see then. Following this, this is the final act of this final scene of this episode, then picks up with Lalo Salamanca. We then see him following him, faking his own death. We then see, following him leaving that compound, having that, person shave his face again. He was not seen over the course of this episode or the next. Then following this, we then see Lalo appearing to get ready to be smuggled across the border in this sort of smuggling truck. Definitely a callback to season 3 of Breaking Bad in the very first episode of that season, the season premiere. Definitely this same sort of truck that the cousins tried to smuggle over go over the border. But of course, once one of the migrants tried to Saul his shoe, they definitely, again, I'm not really sure what the premise of that scene was, where once their identities were discovered, they had to kill everyone. Again, we're going way back into the Breaking Bad weeds here. But anyway, it appears that some plan was enacted here by Lalo, but of course, before he gets onto the truck to go across the border, he then calls Hector Salamanca first, his uncle, to sort of tell him that he's still alive. And it's definitely clear to us that once Hector gets that phone call, he's very sad and dejected. It's likely that someone in the cartel, maybe even the cousins, told him the news that Lalo was dead. So he was very sad, very upset. And of course, his demeanor completely changes when he hears Lalo's voice and he realizes that Lalo was still alive and he faked his own death. Of course, in this scene, we see Lalo saying he's going to go right to Gus and he's going to kill him. He's just going to absolutely go ape shit on him, for lack of a better term escaping me right now. Of course, following this, he then asks Hector if he thinks there's a better way. You know, it's then revealed to us that, you know, he does the sort of a Ouija board thing where he spells out different letters and to see what Hector is thinking. Of course, I believe he says the Spanish word for proof here, where Hector is basically telling Lalo he needs proof before he goes after Gus. You know, he needs there to be, you know, absolute dead to rights proof that he ordered this hit on him, you know, not just, you know, this sort of insinuation. That's not enough. You know, he needs to have Don Eladio's blessing here, because Don Eladio, of course, despite the fact that Don Eladio doesn't, you know, see Gus as an equal in the cartel, he definitely respects him in the sense he earns a lot of money. So it's not in, you know, everyone's best interest, especially not in Eladio's best interest, for you to kill Gus Fring without this proof. And then, so basically following this, again, a long dramatic sort of back and forth ensues where Lalo asks for his money back. The smugglers basically say, you're not getting anything back. There's no refunds. Of course, following this, Lalo then kills these two men, you know, very dramatically, telling, you know, the old woman to make sure everyone gets their money back. He then takes their truck and drives away, thus ending the first episode of season 6 of Better Call Saul. Just unbelievably well done. I mean, I was on the edge of my seat for this entire episode. It was just unbelievable. I love the pace of this first episode. It was just unbelievable. I really enjoyed it. Again, so much set up here. Again, I wasn't even sure I was pretty sure this was the final scene of this episode, but then when it picked up right away without anything else, and there wasn't even a title sequence after the cold opening scene of episode 2, I was really kind of wondering what was going on. But yeah, unbelievable premiere for sure. I absolutely loved it. I mean, so much set up here. So again, before I get into the second episode, I guess, yeah, I'll go through this chat here, kind of see what everyone's thinking. So yeah, I love that scene too, when Gus broke that glass. Definitely seeing him sort of very flustered in a way we haven't seen him before in the plot of Breaking Bad, for sure. That was getting ahead of myself here for the second episode for sure. But yeah, kind of going back in the chat here, I just kind of, anyone who's tuning in a little bit late, I kind of just went over the first episode pretty quickly. My initial reaction, again, I just having watched it, you know, just kind of looking over my notes of what happened here. So I'm kind of going through the chat here. So yeah, it's a lot of questions here. Why did Gus give the Salamangas the hotel number? Again, the question about the safe is definitely a big one as well. So just going through the chat here. So yeah, definitely notice Gus's Wesley, notice the twitching of the thumb too. Gus is definitely, again, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but yeah, the second episode definitely noticed the twitching of the thumbs for sure. Definitely noticed that. So definitely Gus not being it's really different to see Gus not in complete control here for sure. You know, it's quite the cognitive dissonance. Again, I don't even know if these terms are right, but again, it's the contrast of Gus Fring in Breaking Bad compared to what he's been so far in this episode is pretty unbelievable. So yeah, so all right, so yeah, so that's basically the first episode here. Gonna get into the second one right now. Unfortunately, I have to take a quick break here. I'm sorry to say, but I will be. I'm really sorry to have to end this right now. But I will be back in talking about the second episode in a couple minutes. Just have to, the nature of life. I'll be back in a couple minutes to talk about the second episode of season 6 of Better Call Saul. It'll be a much longer stream when I start that one. I'll definitely kind of get more into the sort of comments here where we can kind of go back and forth and talk about both episodes combined. But got to end the stream, unfortunately. But I will start up the second stream momentarily. So if you want to see that, come back in a few minutes. But I got to take a quick break here. The nature of life. So I'll be right back.